Okay, so I got a piece of fabric here, and we are going to interface it. Okay, so this is going to show you exactly how to do that. Grabbing a pair of fabric scissors, and this is just a square of fabric. So I'm going to cut something not too big, about there, and carrot, all the way across, and tear this little string off, put the rest of this up. Now I need to get a piece of fabric, or a piece of interfacing that's about this big, okay? So I'm going to come over here to my big old piece of interfacing, or this big old thing of interfacing. Now this is how I just kind of guesstimate how much interfacing I need. I just put it up like this. And actually there's a piece near the bottom that's about the size that I need, so I don't have to cut into it and make this big ugly shape. That is good enough for what we're doing. So I'm just going to cut this off. Now remember from one of our other videos, one of the videos in the past, where you learned that if you're doing your interfacing, it needs to be slightly smaller than your piece. Regardless of whether you're block fusing, which is what we're doing, we're block fusing, or whether you're, what do you call it, piece fusing. It still needs to be a little bit smaller, that way it will hold to the fabric better. Don't know really why it does this, but the best explanation I can give you, I'm just going to cut a piece that's this big. Okay, the best explanation that I can give you for why is because it seems to hold on to the fabric better when it's slightly smaller. So I can see through this fabric, or through this interfacing, so I kind of know where to cut it. Okay, most interfacing you can't see through. Now remember, as far as grain lines, this is the straight grain, and this is actually the selvage of this piece of interfacing. So in knowing that, it still needs to go grain line wise the same direction as my fabric. So I have that going. My iron is hot. Now I'm going to do a very small amount of steam. Sometimes the steam helps set it, set the interfacing. I'm doing a pretty high amount of heat. I'm doing it all the way to the top where the cotton setting is. Now, the best thing that you could do is to take another piece of muslin or a piece of fabric, preferably muslin, so you don't mess up anything, and to use it as a pressing cloth. And it would help if you had a large piece of muslin, or maybe even a large piece and a smaller piece that you could use just for pressing cloth. Okay, so I'm going to do that to show you the best way to do that. Now set it down, put a little steam on it, run it back and forth to try to make sure it's sticking. And you may be able to hear this. Then I'm going to slowly slide and do some steam. Now it has, like I said, a small amount of steam coming out of it, but you need to move slowly. And go over, okay? So we've done this side. You can see the part where we did and where we didn't do. So we're going to go from the other to the other side. And sometimes you do have to give it a couple passes just to make sure it is as interfaced as possible. And just go over it. Now, here's a quick note, and I know it's kind of late to talk about this, but you do need to try and match to the best of your ability your fabric with your the fabric color to the interfacing color, or the interfacing color to the fabric color, because you can see through it, or when you can see through it, there's a big color difference. And you can see this, that's just showing you can see through the fabric where it is and where it isn't. Yeah, got all this thread on here. But yeah, so this is interface well. Now you can turn onto the front of the fabric. You can kind of press it a little bit more. If you mess up and you need to pull the interfacing off, go through this process and steam it, and it should moisten the interfacing just well enough for you to be able to pull it off. And you can pull it off slowly. Okay? But if you don't need to do that, don't do that, because the more you keep going back and forth, the harder it is to reapply it. Because you're kind of like messing up the glue. Okay? So there's that, and like I said, make sure there's like a little halo effect going around. It doesn't need to go all the way to the edge, and then you'll do your best interfacing that way. Okay? Now I'm not going to show you the sew-on interfacing because that one's pretty self-explanatory. It's just like if we took this and you layer it, sew your layers together inside the seam allowance, not on the seam line, inside the seam allowance, and then you sew your actual garment. So it acts like a double layer. And you can do the same thing using just another layer of fabric. Okay? Now, if we wanted to cut something out, which I'll show you next, this is how.